Good afternoon. Welcome to the final segment of the 2023 Virtual Great Lakes Fishing Show. We're at the Greater Niagara Fishing and Outdoor Expo, and we're with one of our favorite guests. It's Captain Vince Pierleoni. Captain, how you doing?
Doing great.
You wrapped up today. You were talking more fishing. Yesterday, it was the salmon school, so you were really busy yesterday. Tell us a little bit about that and how that went this weekend.
Well, it was pretty intense. I mean, they were wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and full of questions. We limited the questions to the end of each segment. So the promoter, Joe, he made sure we had an hour segment this morning to answer any questions that we didn't get to.
People will on the top or about the
popularity of Chinook salmon and coho salmon is at an all-time high. We have a lot of great fisheries, but that Pacific salmon fishery is very unique, as people know. And in the Great Lakes, it's as good as anywhere, if not better.
Mm-hmm. So
people get to enjoy it. More and more people are buying multi-use boats. They can fish walleye, salmon, and they have some of the equipment already. And certainly, the Fishhawk has been a game changer because these guys can dial in their speeds, that salmon like for each presentation.
Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. We got about 18 minutes here, just to talk about some of the gear that's on your boat that you use to do your job, catch more fish for people. What are some of the favorite pieces of equipment that you have on your boat?
So we covered that in the seminar. Lake Ontario, fortunately, we're not crystal clear. We have a lot of fertility in the water. We get a lot of turbidity out of the Niagara River coming from Lake Erie. So downriggers still play a very big role. They're very efficient, and after that we got dipsy divers, are extremely important. Catch a lot of nice salmon on dipsy divers. And then inline planer boards, very versatile. They work lead core and shorter coppers on the inline planer boards.
Let's kind of dig into each one of those. What are you using for downriggers on your boat, and why did you choose that?
So I run Canon Optimums, the Digitrol Optimums. It's a long way from my first set of downriggers, which was hand crank Riviera downriggers. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there were guys in the class that remembered
yeah.
those. Yeah. And laughed. And one guy mentioned, if you didn't put the latch on the handle, you got a knuckle buster. But now we've got these downriggers that give us real-time info on the downrigger, give us speed, temperature, and we can even see bottom, things like that that was not even thought of years ago. And I really enjoy the speed and the auto stop features, which for me, being a charter captain, you've been able to bring a rigger up and not worry about it, hitting the top and breaking the ball off.
When you say speed, you mean the retrieve speed, the fast retrieve speed.
Yeah, retrieve speed.
Yeah, that auto, you just push
the auto up. Yeah,
you can walk away from it.
Exactly.
It comes up, stops, a foot short.
It's very, very valuable.
When we collaborated with Canon on that project, to get the Fishhawk information on there, we knew it would be cool. I mean, we're like, okay, yeah, this will be a cool project, but not until I actually saw it on the boat. I think we went out of Sturgeon Bay one day. It was the first time that I actually used it on the water. It's like what I thought and what I actually saw was like, okay, this is beyond cool. This is really, really, really nice.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I was, and here I've been working on this for a couple of years and had kind of my own expectations. And then all of a sudden now you see this stuff on there and it's like, it's, I'm not going to say game changer, but it's pretty darn nice.
Pretty darn nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's very nice to have. So, we also had a lot of positive feedback in the class because there's so many people running these multi-species boats now. They may not have that Mac Daddy of downriggers, but they're running those TDs. So they're able to tell, which is also a Fishhawk unit. You guys obviously know that, but they're able to tell whether divers are running or maybe their one copper rod that they have out. And not surprisingly, there were a lot of charter captains in the class too that were familiar with the equipment, but were just looking to keep learning, especially if they were from another area.
Trevor, I'll let you kind of explain that. I think Vince is right, and I was telling you, I had somebody walk by the booth today that was familiar with Fishhawk and how it worked, but wasn't familiar with some of the other products. He knew what the X4 was, what the X4D was, but talk about that TD and how salmon anglers, salmon trollers could put that to work for themselves.
So there's really two applications for the TD for even somebody that might have an X4, X4D on the boat. I mean, there's kind of two applications where that still a really valuable piece of equipment, to add kind of their arsenal. First one is there's nothing faster, and what I mean by that is in the 5 foot mode, where it shows you the water temperature every 5 feet. You can motor out, and if you're a guy like me, right, and fishes on the weekend, and I don't know where temp is. Now, fortunately, I got buddies like, I can say, hey, and they'll actually, whatever. But beyond that, if I don't know where I'm going, it is way faster to send the TD down on a rod and reel with some 2-3 ounces of weight. I usually use a 3. It's way faster to run out 100 feet of water, drop the TD down, see my water temp every 5 feet, than it is to run out, lower a downrigger, raise the downrigger. Okay, well, it's not here. I got to keep going. So that's application number one. Application number two is, like Vince was saying, as far as knowing where your tackle is running, you can let that TD, you set it to what we call the by depth mode, where it only gives you the maximum depth. You have your dipsy diver out there running, and you clip that thing over the line, turn it on, let it slide down to the dipsy diver. It'll tell you exactly what the maximum, or to the nearest foot, it'll tell you the maximum depth in there. And over the course of time, just by writing down that information, let's say you're going to pull that dipsy anyways, and it's out 175 on a number 2. Before you clear that line, you're going to change lures. Maybe you're done for the day. Run the TD down, takes an extra minute, whatever. Crank it in, write the information down. Over the course of a few days of fishing, month of fishing, whatever, you end up with a lot of data. Then at that point, you can go back, make a little spreadsheet at home, and now you have a depth chart for how your tackle runs. So now the stuff on the back of the package sometimes gets you close, sometimes it's not even close. Who runs dipsy divers on 25-pound mono anymore, right? I mean, so right. Now you've actually got data that's derived from your from the tackle on your boat. So those are kind of the two things that the TD does, even if you have a regular Fishhawk system on the boat. So.
And you were talking yesterday in a seminar, people were asking kind of when to do it. And you're like, well, you can go out and spend a whole day going through, or you can do like what you just said, which is, end of the day, you're ready to pull that rod.
I don't like dropping divers or copper and reeling it back in more than anybody else does. Certainly not these guys that do it every day. So just by accumulating that data over the course of a season or a couple weeks or whatever, you just keep filling in your spreadsheet essentially, and you end up with a lot of data pretty quickly.
So you're talking about using the inline boards with lead core, short copper. What boards are you using?
I use Ninja boards. They're from Dreamweaver. Very, very reliable and easy to use. There's multiple sizes depending on your application, and they've worked out really well for me. We had one thing I wanted to bring up and relevant to the X4, the X4D. We didn't have an awful lot of pre-fish time this year when we first got to the East End for some pro-ams, and we didn't have the concentration of big salmon at home in Alcott when we left. It was early July. But we were catching some really nice fish, and we were keying in on the temperature these fish wanted to ride at. It was much higher in the column where we left. And we got east, it was deeper, but we found our key fish were coming from the same temperature. And I can give you the temperature, I'll tell you it was 48 degrees, but it's not always the same. It was just ironic that those bigger fish were coming out of that temperature in thermocline. in a total different column of water when I got east, when it was deeper, and that was a part of our success.
Makes you wonder if that's like forage driven, or it's you get those little things like that where they're consistent in different areas, and you kind of have to ask the question, what's going on here that's
right.
making this the same in a different spot.
If you guys have any questions for Captain Vince Pierleoni, put them in the comments and we'll get them to him. Vince has got about 10 more minutes with us, and then we'll bring in the next guest. So we talked about kind of what you're running as far as lines. How about rod and reel setup? What are you using there?
So I run Akuma rods and reels. I run the 30 size for my riggers and my wires. And then we have larger reels for the coppers and the lead cores. The cold water makes a 55 series, Akuma cold water. And then there's larger convectors also that will store that amount of line. But, they've been reliable for us.
How about the rods?
Akuma rods. I like 10-foot rods for my divers, which are primarily wire divers. They call it medium heavy, but they're really not. They're more of a medium action, got a parabolic action to it, and takes up a lot of the shock. And then we put what's considered old school, but I prefer the twilly tips because any position that rod gets turned in, you avoid the kinks at the end. And some people like the roller guides, but you got to really pay attention to the position of the rod.
Mm-hmm. It's good. Something to think of.
Yeah. So we've talked about kind of what's on the back end of the boat. How about the front end of the boat, at least at the helm? What are you running for electronics other than the Fishhawk?
So I run Humminbird helixes and dual frequency. There's certain times for 50s, certain times for 200, but they've been good for us as well.
How do you utilize it? What does it look like? What's your setup look like when it comes to these electronics?
So in the boat that I fish the tournaments out of, I have overhead set. Well, I have GPS and radar, and the other side's a fish finder. I also have a lower set for the helmsman, so he doesn't have to do this all the time. But when you're in the cockpit, you can see the overhead, and we have redundancy with multiple transducers, and so that's what it looks like. And then I have a Fishhawk high, and I have a Fishhawk head low. Use obviously one at a time, but that's helpful too. But of course, we have the data on the optimums as well.
So having that information at the back of the boat when you're working in that area is really valuable.
Very valuable.
All right, we got a question here. And I answered this question like yesterday. Trevor, I'll let you answer it this time. Trevor, when is the next best Fishhawk next generation coming out? Bought my Fishhawk X4D for my salmon boat from Fish USA in 2020. Serious charter boat captains are ready for new features.
The simple answer is it'll be out when it's ready, and I wish I could answer it because we can do if it's things that are within our control, then that's great. But there's just so many things out of our control, and this whole we're just a small company, but we are part of a global supply chain. And for some reason, I can't figure out why Toyota gets microchips faster than I do. If somebody knows the answer, you got any hookups over at Toyota, send them my way because there's a few pieces we need. But no, I think you said it the other day, we're always working on, what's next. And that horizon has been pushed out, over the last few years, just based on just simple availability of parts. So the answer is, David, when it's ready. And I don't know when that is yet. So
always working on stuff, always trying to, I mean, if you're doing that as an angler too. You're always trying to get better. I mean, you've been in this business for a long time. You've been doing this, but if you just said, hey, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, it's not going to get you too far. I mean, obviously you want to work on that bedrock of the things but you're always looking for new stuff.
That's a really, really good term. I like that. Definitely do not want to mess with the bedrock, but you're always working to the edge. And something to keep in mind, something I drove home in the salmon school was, if these fish didn't adapt and change, there wouldn't be any left.
Right.
These to hundreds and hundreds of years. by not only man, but bears and overhead birds of prey. Everybody wants a bite of those things. And so they change. We have to change with them. And we have to get better or we're going backwards.
Mm-hmm. So you're a charter captain, but you do a ton of tournaments as well. Talk to us kind of about your tournament schedule and what you've got planned this year.
So I think we're going to do 10 this year. We used to do more on the Canadian side. We might ease back into that. What happened was, they closed the border down and we ended up with bookings on those dates of those tournaments, and they were great folks and enjoyed fishing with them, and they had a great time.
Hard to turn that down when they get those dates in.
Hard to turn it down because you're really letting them down, and so we're gonna do one in Canada this year. We love our Canadian peers; they're great people. We like seeing other areas of the lake and facing those challenges that each location gives us. But when you come from the west end of Lake Ontario and go to the east end of Lake Ontario, that is a really supreme challenge. For example, the Oswego area is a very dynamic. Our area with the Niagara flow, very dynamic, but they're different. Up there, you get in the midsummer period when they hold their pro-ams, and those temp changes and current changes are drastic. So you can have a magical bite overnight that you didn't see coming, and you can have it go really, really, really tough and dry. So we just really enjoy the challenge, and I'm fortunate to have clients that enjoy the challenge. I incorporate clients into my tournament schedule, and it helps us see different ports, meet different people, and met some of the best friends I've met through tournament fishing.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't really know. But when the charter guys are fishing these tournaments, a lot of times it's clients on board, it's clients who are reeling in the fish, but typically that's something when those clients book, you tell them straight up front, hey, we're fishing a tournament. So I'm assuming that's a different type of client base that comes in to do that. Tell me about those people and kind of how you kind of laid that out for them and what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, you really got to screen it because, if most of the time we spend a day or two pre-fishing, and effective pre-fishing doesn't always mean smashing fish.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to eliminate water. You may want to dabble where you think it's going to be good. But they need to understand that. But anytime you put a hook in the water, you can catch a fish of a lifetime. And we've had it happen. We've had trophy class fish of all the species in the Great Lakes caught not only during the tournaments but during pre-fish days, and even derby prize winning fish. We have summer long derby going on, so everybody gets entered in it to be eligible, and then you're getting ready for the main event. So yes, they have to be screened, the proper mindset to know that we're going to do this, you're going to enjoy it more if we take it serious. And that takes special people.
Yeah. A lot of times it's the same. You get like the same crew a lot of times for those tournaments, right? It's like I want to book this tournament next year, right?
Yeah. So I have one gentleman in particular that books the majority of them. He's become a great angler through fishing tournaments with me. But I've incorporated some new crews in the last couple of years, and they've done well also.
So you got new crews, and then the other thing is, and you talked about a few minutes ago, you're going to new ports and different places, and obviously you've been around long enough where you kind of have an idea of how everything sets up. But what's that like when you've been fishing your home port for, let's say, a month, and then all of a sudden we're going to steam, 60, 70 miles to the east and go fish out of that? What's that transition like?
So last year, and I won't say it was the exception, but it isn't always the case where exactly what you were doing when you left is the best way to approach it. And that's what happened. I talked a lot about the migration of the Pacific salmon in our lake in the summer, and I believe we just kind of stayed with it or stayed ahead of the migration. So they were really some of the same fish that we were fishing for at home, but they just used the lake differently over there, maybe further from shore, deeper in the water column, things like that. So that's the case. And there's other times you get 100, 120 miles down the lake, and you really have to start from scratch. You may be even a different species, so the Pro-Am formats are multi-species, and you may not be able to get your box of just salmon. You may have to mix in some trout. So, that's where it gets, interesting, a lot of strategy on decisions made.
Do you enjoy that, or what do you enjoy? If I could say you can only do one, You can either take clients out as a charter captain or tournament angler. What would you choose? That's a tough one, right?
Oh, I've never been asked that. That's great. As long as you could make it to the end of the year and get your bills paid and everything, it'd be hard for me to not choose tournament fishing. But I really love the change day to day of different people on the boat and things like that. So I think that all in all, it would be no different than a sports team that was with each other all the time, traveling in the locker room and on the water too. And, it'd probably end up with some fisticuffs at some point.
Right. Well, we're wrapping up with the events. Is there anything you wanted to talk about today that we didn't ask you?
Just know that, there's no guarantees, and the popularity is the Pacific salmon, but they are an introduced species of the Great Lakes. Stay involved. Look to protect where you can. Every different region of the Great Lakes is got its own challenges, and as long as the user groups stay high, let the agencies know how much you like fishing for these fish, and come to things like this and be a part of it. That's the best you can do. And I always remind people, don't get upset when your lines are littered with skipper fish, first year salmon. Be careful with those fish, because once they make it to 12 to 18 inches long, they're the ones that are going to be big fish. We get a tremendous amount of mortality and predation on the little guys, the fingerlings, birds, warm water predators. But once they hit that skipper size, man, handle them with care. Use a lot of care. Don't just rip the hooks out, because those fish are going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds by the following year and go up from there. So that's probably what I would share.
Very good. Captain Vince Pierleoni from Thrill Seeker Sport Fishing. Vince, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks
Always
a lot.
Super gracious with your time.
It's great seeing you.
Nice haircut.
Thanks. Yep. It's very close.
All right, Vince. Thank you. Safe travels home. Got our next guest coming up here in just a second. You all right?
Yep.
Get out of there.
Oh.
Got him in a pretty tight spot. Here you go, Vince.
Here's your water.
Here's your water.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
Yeah, you bet.
Good to see you. All right, we got Captain Rob Mallory coming on the show. Rob and Vince have been busy all weekend talking salmon fishing at the school. We got one question here from Nick Cook, and we'll pull this up. This is getting another question for Trevor. Nick says, isolate the Fishhawk from main battery or other electronics. What do you recommend there?
No, as long as your power supply is clean, you don't need to isolate it for any reason. Amp draw is super minimal. The only kind of caveat there is if it's clean. So if your boat is wired properly to begin with, no problem putting it with all the other stuff.
All right, Captain Rob Mallory, why don't you slide up a little bit closer here to this golden mic?
Sure.
We saved the gold mic for you.
All right.
So, Rob, I'm excited to have you on. First of all, we've never had you on the show before. It was fun to have you on. But the thing that I'm really excited about is you're a super smart guy. So we had Ali Shakur on the other day. He's getting his PhD. You have one. I'm a straight C student, so you guys are way above.
I think straight C would be generous from what I've seen. Yeah.
You guys are way above my pay grade, but your PhD is in semiconductor device physics.
That's correct. Yeah.
What does that mean?
A semiconductor is what all the chips are made of for computers, right? And so you're looking at transistors, things like that, right? So it's really microelectronics. Those are layered structures that they grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I did that out of grad school for a little bit, and then I'm at Lockheed Martin doing work there. So not related to that anymore. But
not related to that. So
just doing some good technical work and
so semiconductor device physics, working at Lockheed Martin. How does that translate to catching salmon?
Well, to me, right, I've always been a thinker. And so, I started fishing young. I started fishing for trout and salmon on the Finger Lakes when I was probably 12. I had a boat when I was 12. My grandmother used to drive me to the boat launch, and we'd launch the boat, and she'd do crochet. She'd crochet, and I'd go fish for a few hours.
Cool.
Very cool.
So, I fished all my life. And so to me, what it comes down to is when I'm fishing, I want to take as much data as I can get my hands on. And then I want to start looking at variables that I need to optimize when I'm out there fishing. And so, for me, the Fishhawk is integral to what we do. That's as important to me as any other on water data that I'm getting, whether it's from my electronics or otherwise.
Where's your boat set? Where you typically fish?
Yeah, so I fish. I got two slips. I fish out of Oswego and I fish out of Sodus.
Okay.
Nominally out of Oswego, but we do keep a slip in Sodus. If the fishing's tough, sometimes I like to be able to bounce back to the west just a little bit. And where I live, I'm 35 minutes from Oswego and 50 minutes from Sodus. So, but nominally we're out of Oswego.
So it's interesting, though, that you got your start in the Finger Lakes. It's funny walking around this building because a lot of the more accomplished anglers I talked to in here, they did the same thing you did. As youngsters, they were out in small boats out on the Finger Lakes, learning and cutting their teeth there. How is fishing there in the Finger Lakes? How does that similar to what you would do on Lake Ontario?
Yeah, so back in the day, right, as a kid, so there was a company in Naples, New York, Sutton Company. They built little flutter spoons. They've been in business forever, right? And so there it's primarily a lake trout fishery. But as a kid, really, trying to employ some of the tactics that they were using on the Great Lakes. Really, I remember I had a small crank downrigger I had on a boat. And it was trying to do that kind of stuff. Guys down there would pull copper, so they would have copper spools on a reel, and they would let that copper out and yank it with these spoons. And so learned kind of at an early age that, to me, when I was fishing, that how important it was to have. I noticed that my catch rates were good when certain things were right with the boat, right? Whether it was the direction I was going or the speed I was going. Of course, you didn't have anything back then you didn't have any GPS or you didn't have anything, right? It was just this feel that you kind of developed. And so I think over time that feel develops in you the more you fish, and it just becomes instinctual. And so you kind of fish in that way. Yeah.
You watch The Angle of the Lines?
No. Is that a movie?
No, the line.
Oh, Angle of the
Lines.
Yeah, the Angle of the Lines we would watch.
Lord of the Rings or something.
The funny thing is I don't watch any movies. I've watched a handful of movies my entire life, so sometimes I'm like, is that a movie? So the Angle of the Lines you'd watch, and just trying to figure it out, and it wasn't, the electronics were non-existent. I remember even when I was in my 20s getting a small Humminbird unit to mount on a small boat that had, the
little fish symbols on it.
Before that, the fish showed up just as like 3 or 4 pixels. I mean, it was really terrible.
Yeah.
Compared to what we have now.
Yeah, I had one of those too.
I think everybody did. Yeah. That was a big deal when they had one that marked it in red, just because it's a different color. But
you'd see the big fish on there and get really excited. Yeah. Oh, there's a big one.
I think for me personally, and one of the things that, when you do this every day, one of the things that I think is exciting or is exciting to me is guys like you, Rob, Ali Shakur, the intersection of science and sport, right? The intersection of science, the fishing, because I mean, you talk to, Vince was just, and Vince well, you talk to guys like that. I mean, the way they approach it, whether they call it science or not, it is. It's the same. It's the scientific process, right? So it doesn't matter what the discipline is, if it's limnology or semiconductors or whatever. The scientific process is like a thread that runs throughout all these things. So you talk, we over the last 4 days here, we've talked to some fantastic anglers, right? And they all fish differently, but that thread runs through the whole. It's the same. They all use the same process or a very similar process, even though they might do things way different or fish different places. Or
they may not realize maybe the why behind it, but they know to do it and to figure it out. Right.
So they've had that experience that I just think that's so huge. And one of the things that, we're fortunate to do traveling around different parts of the country is we see that in different places where it doesn't matter if it's in New York or Oregon, it's the same thing. So
it's a process of learning, and it's something that, like we had Lance on. Lance has got his 8 steps, and really what that is it's a scientific process. It'd be just like what you would do in your job when you're trying to figure out if something's going to work or not. Yeah. You start here, and okay, that works at that point, and then we're just moving down the line, just creating a process.
I'm kind of nerding out here, but that's what it is. I mean, it's what it. I mean, you just see that, and it's like it's not a coincidence.
Right.
All right, we got a question for
Sure.
you here, and I think this is a good question for you, Rob. I'll put it up on the screen here. Jim Lemon wants to know back there was the blocks that control the electric charge from the boat. Yeah, experimented with anything like this.
So it's got a black box. I have Canon in my boat, and so that comes with the positive ion control. I talked about this a little bit in the salmon school, but I absolutely fish different voltages depending on the fish I'm after. And so for salmon, I do like about a half a volt on my corner riggers. And I run, when I'm fishing brown trout, I go just a tad higher on that voltage. But yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, it does help to cancel out. If you've got a boat that's throwing some stray voltage into the water, it does help to cancel that out. A lot of guys are running them. They may not admit it, but there's a lot of guys that are running those.
Yeah. The other thing too that I can tell you, Jim, is it's not, you get a lot of questions exactly like yours here on the Great Lakes. Every in freshwater, but literally every boat trolling has a black box of some kind on it.
Well, let's talk about that, because I've actually talked to different people, and they always will say, well, I believe in it. Well, I don't believe in it. And there's different opinions on it. Rob, obviously, if you're looking. So how do the fish react to those things? And not necessarily the black box and what that does, or the optimum and that ion charge, but how do they react to the stray stuff that you're trying to eliminate?
Well, so typically I think they would avoid the stray stuff, right? And so I'm pretty neurotic about things in general. When I got the boat I've got now, I check all the grounds. I make sure I don't have any resistance between my grounds and my bonding system in the boat. All those things can contribute. And so that's something that I do believe in. And I do believe that running the positive ion or a black box really helps. I know sometimes if you've got kings laying on the bottom, like when they're staging up, you can jack up that voltage a little bit, especially when you're really trying to stir those fish up. You're running real big paddles to try and get an aggression strike out of there. It does seem that if you dial that voltage up a little bit, they will come off the bottom a little bit more. I don't know what it necessarily does to them physiologically, but it definitely has an impact.
You can take a multimeter to an aluminum boat. You can take a multimeter and pull voltage readings off of it.
I guarantee you can.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you wanted to...
And that voltage is just coming off your electronics, through the wires, is coming through the insulation of the wires, or where does that come from?
So it's usually not going to be a huge voltage. It's going to be a small voltage. Essentially, that boat acts like a cell of a battery. And so you've got a ground, and it's no different than when you're at a marina and you've got a bunch of boats hooked up to shore power. There, you're hooked up to shore power. If your boat's out in the water, you've got, you're running, you're generating power through either your DC, you've got your DC battery, you've got an alternator that's charging stuff. So you've got a lot of areas where you could get a little bit of a voltage leak. And so, yeah.
And again, more of a saltwater thing, but you can actually get it just through electrolysis too.
You can.
The actual, aluminum boat in saltwater will actually produce electrolysis. I mean, again, small. I mean, we're not talking crazy voltage here, but
it's measurable.
Yeah.
So we've been getting really nerdy here for the last 4 or 5 minutes.
I like it. I like it.
Let's talk about fishing, Rob.
Yeah.
What do you like to do when you go fishing?
Yeah, so we fish on the east end of Lake Ontario a lot. We don't have kings typically until July. I'll say not fishable numbers most years. Some years we do. But we do a lot of brown trout fishing early on. We love our brown trout, so we fish them a lot. When I'm going out to fish browns, in the spring or in the summer, the big thing that I use the Fishhawk for, springtime, not necessarily as much. There's not a lot of currents. You're in tight. But I like the temperature aspect of it. Where it really shines to me is when you're fishing that late spring into summer, or even really midsummer brown trout fishing. We even fish browns when there's kings around. Sometimes my kid loves them. It's hard to peel them away from them, call them his pets. So, to me, when we go out and we're going to brown trout fish, I'm looking for a specific temperature of water, or, they're a very temperature tolerant fish. So I'm looking, if I've got a lot of really warm water that's pushed in, I'm going to go out and check water with my probe. So I'm going to go out, I'm not even going to fish yet. I'm going to go out and I'm going to put that probe down, and I'm going to see what the temp profile looks like down to the bottom and some of my suspected brown trout areas that I like to fish. And what I like to see is I don't care so much about how warm it is on top, but I like to see a thin layer of water on the bottom that's maybe, 58 degrees, 56 degrees. Those browns will lay down in that. When they want to, they'll lay down in that. They're comfortable in that water, but they'll come up into that really warm water too and feed, and you'll get them up into 70, 60, 69, 71 degree water all day long, especially the big ones. But so we use that a lot. The other thing with browns is they don't like a lot of current. And so if I'm checking temps in the morning without any gear on, and I'm just sitting in neutral checking temps, and I'll put that probe right on the bottom, I'll lay it on the bottom just to see if there's a thin layer of cold water underneath it. But if I'm reading 3/4 mile an hour current just sitting there, I know it's going to be a tough day right away, and I'm going to have to grind on them if we're going to fish for them. I don't mind grinding on them, but I have that mentality right away that, okay, it's probably going to be a little tougher, especially when you got moving water. If you got a big south wind blowing and you've got layers of water, sometimes you'll notice every pass that temp starts moving up because the water on top is getting pushed offshore. You got to adjust up every pass, and then also up and out, because those fish will move out as that warm water is blowing offshore. So for us, it's just a tool that we absolutely use. When we're out there, we're lost if we don't have it. You know what I mean?
Do you think they don't like current or they don't like change?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's probably change, but the current causes the change, right?
I
was moving water. It just really gets tough.
Yeah, I fish in rivers and tailwaters and stuff quite a bit where, you see them, warm water, you see those browns out in, riffle water. I mean, fast water.
Yeah, they will.
Where it's like
streams too.
Where it's just like, I just wonder if it's change, or if it's that flux state, right? Or if it's
So you're scouting for cold, and you're scouting for water that's moving slower.
Not cold. I mean, I like to have that thin water underneath it. I'm not fishing necessarily down there. Absolutely not fishing that, but I like that water because I know they're going to be there. Right? I'm fishing higher up, so I'm probably fishing. It depends. I'm going to look at where I'm marking them, but I'm also going to correlate that with what temps I'm getting. And then as things change through the day, I'll use that information. But 60, 50, 58 to 65 degrees is a pretty good, where that's close to the bottom. It doesn't have to intersect the bottom. They'll lay in colder water. They'll come up to feed. But if I've got that temp and I'm brown trout fishing an area where I know there's browns, like I'm pretty confident that we'll get them.
Very good. One of the things that you said in there was my kid likes browns. So you have a son or a daughter?
I have a son, Bobby. Yeah. I call him on the dock. He's nicknamed Brown Trout Bobby. So
Brown Trout Bobby.
Nice.
He's won the youth lock derby. I don't know, for Browns a few times now. So he's but he definitely likes browns, and he dials them in. He knows what he's doing. He'll run the back of the boat for browns. He understands what to run under different conditions and things like that. He's 12 now, but he's been doing it since he could walk, pretty much. Little guy.
Very nice. So in our neck of the woods, we have a lot of walleye willies. If your name's Willie and you like to fish, you're walleye willie.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we got brown
trout Bobby.
Bobby in your neck of the woods. Tell us about that, though. So that's something that we've been talking about actually here the last couple of days, is getting young people involved in trolling.
Yeah.
Specifically Great Lakes trolling. What kind of things did you do to kind of get him excited?
Yeah, so, we stay on our boat. We've got a 33-foot tiara, so we'll stay right on the boat. For me, the big thing was, when he was little, was not to push it, right? If we're out there fishing and he's hungry, right? It's 9 o'clock.
Captain Krabby.
He's Captain Krabby.
I push him too hard, so like now, okay, I want to interrupt. Yeah.
No, so I didn't push it, but he developed a love for it, really. I mean, he did. He took to it, and he just likes boats. He likes being out there. He knows all the guys. He knows every boat on the water, who it is. He talks to them. He's even texting a lot of those guys on his phone when I'm working the back of the boat. But he really enjoys it. Likes salmon fishing, likes brown trout fishing. We did a lot of brown trout fishing early when he was littler, just because it was easier for him. Those fish are easier. I couldn't at 7 years old put a king on a diver rod in his hand, right? So, but now he's old enough and big enough that he absolutely, he does the king stuff just fine. So I think it's just a slow progression to getting those kids into it. You know what I mean? Make it fun. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's days where I get crabby on the boat too when things aren't going well.
Yeah,
I'm sure that but you just got to make it fun.
Very good. Rob, we appreciate you coming on, man. It was fun having you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys for sure.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Our next guest is Nick DeShano, and he is not made to the bullpen, but he is right on the other side of this.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm going to go grab him.
All right. So Trevor is going to go chase him down. Bill, I see your message on there. I don't have a video right offhand, but I would say go to YouTube. I would put fishing and negative ion charge in there, and you'll get to see probably what you're looking for on that. But Trevor just went down and chased down Nick DeShano from Offshore Tackle. Here he comes. Nick, how's it going?
Good.
Have a seat. You get to talk into the golden
Center
microphone.
chair, huh? All right.
Yeah.
See, Mike. I don't have to rap, do I?
I'm in a little.
I'd like to see it.
I know you won't.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you'd be a pretty fly looking rapper, to be honest.
So Nick, tell us about Offshore Tackle. And first of all, we've never had you on the show.
Yeah.
So just tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been with the company as when I was a little kid, and my dad started out in about 81. So we've been through it, and then it's been a lot of fun. Seen a lot of things change, and meet some great people along the way. And we started out, like I said, in 81, about 91, 92. We started with the planer boards, and that pretty much blew everything up after that. That took us from a kind of a side job when Dad was charter fishing and working for Detroit Edison, and then turned it into a full-fledged business. And I've been fortunate enough I've been involved in the fishing industry my whole life, and that's the jobs I've had. So it's been a lot of fun.
So your dad, Bruce, started the company.
Yep.
And I interviewed him this fall, so you can look up that interview on the podcast. That's kind of cool. So what was the first product then? So it didn't start with planer boards. What was the first product?
The first product was the OR1, just a downrigger release. Dad he grew up in Detroit area. He started coming up as a kid. He'd come up fishing on the Thumb in Lake Huron up in Michigan's Thumb. And I was 5 years old, I think, and he moved up in the Harbor Beach to work at their power plant for Detroit Edison. And started charter fishing, salmon fishing, one of the first salmon charters in the area. And building just original release was just the old metal alligator clip. I remember a little kid, we're gluing pads sitting in our lap in our basement and putting releases together, and eventually it turned into a plastic version of it, and from then it grew on to the stacker releases, and then eventually with the planer boards, and now weight systems and all kinds of different stuff.
So you're gluing those pads in a garage?
In our basement.
In a basement.
In our basement. And the funny thing is, last week, what was I doing in my basement? Gluing pads and releases. The last 2 years have been so crazy. We're scrambling, doing everything we can to catch up.
Well, Bruce is another one of the guys in the industry that is somebody that I really look up to, because it's somebody that proved that you can do this, right? So this is somebody that he's really stayed pretty true to that product line and his vision originally, and so he's another one of those guys that's been around a long time. Offshore's been around a long time, and that's personally been kind of inspirational to me and the whole business part of this, the fishing industry. So that's pretty cool and doesn't go unnoticed. So.
Yeah, no, it's been neat, like I said, and to see even myself to look back and see power plant working and turned into no formal education of that. Everything's seat of your pants, and made a lot of mistakes and made a lot of good decisions along the way. But that's how you learn. That's how you get better with stuff. So
I love those businesses that come out of basements and garages, and you've got even companies like Apple. Started in the garage. To me, that's just awesome. You said as a youngster in 1981, you were tagging around and helping. I notice over here, it looks like, I think that's your son over
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah. My son, he's 12 now.
Yeah.
So, and he's the same thing. I took a picture the other day. We're working in base. You know, but it's kind of neat though to be able to stay that kind of a company. You know,
Yeah.
so many of these companies get big and they get sold out to the big conglomerate companies, and then most of the products go away and if they take the top two. So it's neat to be able in this kind of industry to be able to stay a small family oriented company. And you know, and we work with some amazing people. We have the Romanacks we worked with for years and years, and it's just great. You know, it's just a cool industry to be with. A lot of neat people, and you go to a lot of neat places, and hey, it's, you know, it's better than selling toilet paper. At least we get to go fishing to promote our product, so that's gonna be better than that.
What's that like for your dad to know that not only is his son following his footsteps, but now his grandson's wearing the same sweatshirt?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, I think it hit him the most a few years ago when he did the Hall of Fame induction. You know, I mean, he's going work on that much, so decompress and really start to put some stuff together, and you know, look back in the years and how things happen.
You said something very interesting right there. You said he's settled down. Does that mean that he was once difficult to work with?
No, not really. We've actually had, you know, sometimes the family things can be tough, but we've been pretty lucky, and like I said, a lot of it because I grew up doing it. You know, and most of the stuff that I learned, a lot of it I learned from him. So we're kind of got the same mindset on stuff. You know, there's a few differences, but for the most part, we've kind of got we've done pretty good getting along on there.
Yeah, he won't tell you, but Nick's a pretty highly educated guy, right? And so he made a choice to come back, so it couldn't be all bad.
I don't know about highly educated, but I made it through. We'll put it that way.
So you're not the PhD that Rob Mallory was.
No, I wish.
Yeah, right.
No.
So we kind of got through that first product. Tell us about that transition into boards, and just talk about your boards a bit.
Yeah, well, that come about. I remember we were charter fishing, and you know, that was just when the PWT was getting big and starting to go, and all the walleye stuff was going. And when we were at Lake Huron, we were starting to do the transition. That was one of the first declines of the salmon fishing. So we were looking for different things and different stuff to go into, and we met up with you know, Mark Romanack and Gary Parsons and Keith Cabayas, and then they were using different boards at the time, and then they weren't really performing to what they wanted to do. You know, we had some other ones that we were using, and they just didn't start to do different weights and different stuff out to the side, and it really wasn't working. And we had made the little mini releases to go on other planer boards. And then we started thinking, and they didn't really want to mess with these little releases. So Dad says, well, maybe we'll build our own planer board, put this release on now that we got all the tooling and everything for it. So we hooked up with Mark and Keith and Gary and worked with them to develop the OR12. And, you know, I can remember we were in sports shows at 11 o'clock at night in the swimming pool, you know, pulling the planer board back and forth, and we'd pull it, and we'd have one of our tool maker that helped us design the tool for the original one, and we'd move the bracket around, and we'd pull it across the other way. No, that didn't do anything. And we'd, you know, people are looking in the window at midnight wondering what the heck these guys are doing with this thing in the water. So it was neat, and I'm lucky, you know, to be able to. I was old enough that I could really absorb all that coming up and seeing the whole thing. So it's been pretty neat, you know. Now to see all over the place and popping up, and
there's a lot of choices in planer boards these days. You know, there was then, there is now. What's special about offshore planer boards? Why should they, if someone's in the market, why should they look at yours?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is, you know, for one, it just runs good. It just
they
is a
run
good
super consistent.
You know,
yeah, they're very consistent.
It's durable. We can beat the heck out of the thing. I mean, I played around with our metal bracket. We were our plastic bracket now. We used to have a metal bracket, and then when we switched from the metal bracket to the plastic one, guys, well, can I get the metal bracket? It's stronger and all that. And I'd show them. I take the plastic bracket, and I've literally run it over with my truck, and it doesn't break. You know, I think we've had maybe two that of all the planer boards we've sold, I've only heard of 2 brackets breaking, and who knows how that even happened. So the durability, they just run, and we've got so many ways you can run them. So if you're running heavy weights, you can run it with different styles. We've got it now where you can adjust the weights a little easier. So just pull the screw out, you can flip the weight around 180 degrees, and now the weight's all the way forward. So if you're pulling the heavier lead cores or weighted steel lines and stuff like that, you can adjust them. You can change the toe points, the different releases we offer between braid or monofilament releases. So there's just so many options you can do, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Whatever works for you. You talk to 10 guys running boards, you'll get a whole bunch of different ways of doing it, and everyone that runs it, their way is the way to run it. So you try it, and whatever you're most comfortable with, that's what you stick with and do.
I think I saw an Insta post this winter, somebody using an offshore board as an ice scraper for the windshield of their car. It's like, so multi-function.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them, like when you go to the tournaments, a lot of our pro staff guys will have repair kits. Mm-hmm. So if you get your foam beat up, your flag's all faded out or twisted over the years of running it, you go up to them and say, hey, you got a piece of foam, we get foam, you can rebuild the board. And I still see boards out there with the metal brackets on them, and those got to be 20 plus years old.
I think the other thing too, as a fellow kind of domestic manufacturer, I know the guy that supplies all their foam, right? And pretty cool that it's a Michigan made product from pellet up, basically from the pellets of plastic right through the foam, through everything. And so that's something to keep in mind too.
Yeah, well, and it's nice because our plastic company is both of them are within 2-hour drives of my house. Yeah. So we got an issue, we go there, or we're building a new product, we can design it. I can be there in 2 hours and look at it, and I like being able to go in the morning and I'm watching the people build our planer boards. I don't have to learn a different language to talk to the people that are building our products for it. And I think that goes a long way, and it's more expensive. We make more money if we send it over to China and get it copied, or, we could make more money, but we can't control the quality of it. And we can't control the supply as well. We've had issues the last couple of years, but I can't imagine if we had to wait for a ship to come across, and that could be months. So there's just some advantages we can work around, and we don't plan anytime soon for any reason to do anything different. I like doing it, and I like being able to have that flag on the product, and it's important to me.
Yeah, you alluded to it there a little bit. The last 2 years, it's been tough. Just keeping things in stock, and not only just we've had a lot of demand and people want to go fishing, they're buying stuff, but also on the back end, even as an American manufacturer, like sometimes it's just tough to get stuff. Things cost more, and it's kind of, it's caused a disruption for everybody. How'd you guys navigate that, and what do you see kind of moving forward with that?
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least, and we don't have a huge, group put together to begin with to build everything. So we've been doing good, and the last couple of years have been behind, but we're catching up now. Good. Supplies, it's like anything else. You get going good, and one little nickel dime part holds you up for a couple.
We call it the 100th part. So if you need 100 parts and you have 99, you're 99% of the way there. But it doesn't matter, because if you don't have the 100th part, you can't get out the door.
Yeah. But luckily this year we're finally getting into a spot where things are a lot better shape, and the supply is getting a lot better out there. So hopefully that's behind us, and we can get on forward to like what we've been doing. So,
hey, we got one here from Glenn Gnetsky. Glenn says a great product, used OR12s last spring, worked awesome. Just ordered some OR37 mags for 400 copper. Intimidating at first until you catch your first salmon or first king on one. Thank you. Thanks for the comment there, Glenn.
That's great. Yeah, well, and those are fun. That big Magnum board we built, and we tested that with 500 copper. I tested it. I had back surgery, and when we were building that board, I had back surgery in July, I think. So I had to wait till September before I'm out testing it again. But I'm, out there drilling this thing in, and it's been running. It runs good. It's got a lot of flotation in it, so it stays above the water nice. It runs a lot different than our OR12. The OR12s run pretty nose up, whereas the mag board, it runs fairly level, but it doesn't dive. There's enough float where it stays level, and it just kind of go through the water like a tank. But it'll pull some heavy weight, and it pulls harder. But typically, if you're running 400 copper, you've got a bigger rod, and you really, after a while, you don't notice any difference as far as just bringing it in. Everything runs the same. You hook it up the same way. So yeah, that's been a good one. And there's some guys that are using it. Catfishing guys down south, they're using it a lot. They're pulling big 12-ounce weights with 2-pound skipjack for bait behind those things.
Using the big board.
The big board and catching 80-pound catfish with the thing.
Cool.
And that's pretty neat to see.
So we went from the clip to the board. Now we got even more stuff. Tell us about kind of the entire product line, some of the other things that we haven't talked about yet.
Yep, we got our weight systems. After the board then there was the weight system. Snap weights with the release, the OR16 with the pin in the center of the pad. The weight systems went a long ways, and then after we developed that for a while, we come out with our tadpoles. We found those, and the nice thing with the tadpoles is they're better at pinning down a weight. The snap weights are good if you're searching the water column and you don't exactly know where the fish are at, and it covers more water. Where if I want to go 12 feet down, you put the tadpole on there with a crawler harness or a spoon or even a crankbait behind it, and then it'll get you right to where you need to be. And it's good for all species. We've caught everything from crappie to salmon on these things, and it's just another way of just getting everything down. We're in the strike zone where it needs to be.
Your dad was showing me a crankbait tuner that you have out too. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the crankbait tuner is neat. It's a little different than this. It's not a set of pliers,
right.
But it's got the I don't know, I guess where you'd say like a collapsing jaw. It just kind of ratchets open, so you squeeze it, and the amount of pressure that it takes to pop that jaw open, that's how much you move the eye, and that'll help because you don't have to worry about pliers nicking the side of the bill or anything on it. And the biggest advantage is you get a small, thin wire, a thin-eyed bait like a flicker shad or something like that. It's easy to over-tune it.
Was that the idea? Was to keep from, and tuning a crankbait a little goes a long ways. Was that the idea? Was to just have it where you can make those micro adjustments?
Yeah, and that's it. It's because most people that aren't used to tuning a crankbait, they put pressure on the eye and they move it until they see it move. Well, if you're seeing the eye move, you probably
maybe went too far.
The bait.
Interesting.
And a lot of times when we just give enough pressure, and there's a pressure adjusting the knob, you tighten the knob down, and the tighter you turn the knob, the more pressure it takes to break open. So like a flicker shad, you start out pretty light, and as soon as I keep adding the pressure, I'll give it maybe a half a turn. If that doesn't make a change, I'll give it another half, and then as soon as you see the bait start to make a change, I just leave that alone, and you give it a couple more clicks. The biggest thing to remember with that is that when you open the jaw, it breaks the jaws open. So you got to remember to go in there and manually close that jaw shut. And every time you make an adjustment, you close the jaw shut. Because when you put it back on the crankbait, it looks like you might be able to squeeze it, but it's not. No matter how hard you squeeze, you're not going to make an adjustment, and then you could have an issue there. So just remember to close that jaw, and you'll be good.
Explain to people it's like a torque wrench for your crank.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Exactly.
It's like basically a torque driver. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here's a question for you. You're probably the expert at this. This is from Jim. He wants to know what's the best glue when replacing rubber pads.
Best glue. We use just a good, like a water-resistant super glue, something that doesn't expand. So you don't like a Gorilla Glue, how that'll expand. You don't want that. Just a good water-resistant super glue. I like to get a pair of vice grips and just open it up. You got to be careful when you open it up, especially with the pliers. It's easy to open it too far, or just make sure if it's open that way. When you release it, you want to make sure that those two little pins in the back of the release line up in the hole, so when you close it down, they don't break off. So you just let it down real slow. But yeah, it takes a little bit. You chip away the pad on the inside, but eventually you scrape all that out of there. And then just a little drop of glue in the center is all you need. You don't need a lot of glue. I mean, the glue we drop is probably not much bigger than the size of a pencil that gets dropped in there. And then just drop them in there. A good idea to do for wintertime, or if you're going for a long time without using the releases, you rip off little pieces, whether it's a paper plate or something, and you shove that between the pads. So if they sit too long, those pads sometimes might stick together, and then when you go to open it, it could pull them out. So a good winter storage is to put the little chunks of paper in between the pads.
There's your pro tip.
Yep, and that'll help.
Paper in the pads, pro tip.
Paper in the pads with a pro tip. Nick, appreciate you sitting down with us. If people want to find out more about Offshore Tackle, where should they go?
They can go to our website, offshoretackle.com. We got Facebook page. It's the same thing. Just search Offshore Tackle on Facebook, and we've got Instagram and YouTube videos and all that stuff. And thanks, guys, for having me. It's been great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here, man. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you. Yeah.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your show.
Sounds good. We're looking forward to it.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
All right, up next, we're going to talk a little Facebook kind of stuff right now. We've got Doug Bruegmann coming on. Doug's over there talking to some customers. I'm just going to shout over there. Hey, Doug! Well,
You're literally going to shout over there.
Yeah, the guy's.
Doug's up. Here he comes.
Here he comes. Hand that bag to that customer. Come on over. Come around this way, Doug.
Yeah, it's good.
Alrighty.
Have a seat right here.
What are you guys doing today?
Pull right up to that microphone.
We're doing
right
good.
there.
Good. Awesome.
You get the golden microphone.
I know, it's distracting.
That's how much we love you.
It's distracting.
Stare cross-eyed at it.
Yeah, right.
So, Doug, we brought you on. I met you, I think, yesterday or the day before, and you had the Sweetwater Trolling T-shirt on. I'm like, what do you know about those guys? And you're like, I started it.
Yep. That was my thing. I started Sweetwater Trolling a couple of years ago. It was mostly just, getting into the salmon tackle, fishing, and looking for new stuff. And I started following more and more tackle makers all over the United States. And that turned into me starting a website where I every first morning, opened up all these tackle makers social media pages, and I report on if they have new products, sales, giveaways, things like that. It's all in one place. It's all automatically reported through Facebook to my website, and it's information that's available. So
Sweet.
For one of the more popular emails that goes out is it's called Target Walleye. And they send this email out of basically what's going on in the industry around walleyes. And what you've done essentially is built a Facebook page that kind of does that, but around the trolling world.
yeah, and also with the website, if you don't like, there's a lot of people who don't like Facebook. It's not the most popular, it's out there on the website as well.
Sure.
So there's multiple places you can get that information.
And this is something that you do like manually. You're actually in the dirt doing this.
Yes, I do. Like I said, every morning I'm getting up before I start work, and I go through this routine, and it doesn't take me all that long, but it's a lot of fun. I've met a lot of really cool people this way. I have guys throwing me tackle to do giveaways. Sometimes they're just sending me tackle for thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So and it's been really awesome. So had some great opportunities already.
Who are some of your favorite companies to check out?
Some of my favorites, Hypervis Tapes out west. They've got a really great product. I've been actually playing around with it a little bit myself. That stuff's really phenomenal. The sparkle, that tape, when you start lighting it up with the laser, it's shooting stuff all over the place.
Yeah,
it really attracts the fish.
I mean, right there. So that's a brand that I don't even know, right? So now so there you go. So I do this every day, right? I don't know about this brand, and I still don't know.
And
So,
there's
that's
so
why.
many out there, right? So some of the others that I've done with is Brown Dog Fishing, again, another West Coast company, and they do 3D printed lures, including they do a little 2-inch Firefly J-plug, and they also have this interesting what they call a wounded minnow, and it's a semi-curved strip of 3D printed plastic that swims upside down, and it just looks phenomenal in the water. And we've done a giveaway with them.
Does it catch fish?
It does catch fish. It catches a lot of fish, actually. Triple Threat Lures up in Canada. Really had a phenomenal giveaway with them. They were really great to work with. So, there's some of the...
Do you find a lot of it is cottage brands, startup companies, or
Yes.
is that what you're finding a lot of?
Yeah, I try to, I'm really there to try and help those small getting
attention.
started.
Yeah.
And what surprised me for no more than what I do, which is basically I just reshare what they posted, make a little comment, and they're telling me all the time, it's like, thank you so much. This has helped me sell.
That's great.
Right. And they really appreciate the extra share and the extra effort that I give them. So,
And we do too. And that's how I knew who you were, because just about every morning I go online, Sweetwater Trolling shared your post.
Well, and I appreciate it. It's awesome. It's been a lot of fun.
So some of those are kind of three of the brands that you've discovered, and some of your favorite brands that you've worked with. Tell us about maybe some of the bigger brands that you see, because obviously you're doing a lot of work out there. You're looking at social media. Who are some of the brands that you think are just killing it on social media, doing a good job there?
Triple Threat Lures, who I mentioned, they're really, they really have a good game going. They've stepped up their game in terms of new products. They definitely have some fantastic spoons out there. The other thing is they've just started doing meat rigs and flashers, and they use the HyperViz tapes. Mm-hmm. So really, really good looking product out there. Trying to think who else off the hook. Yeah, now you got me on the spot. I'm getting a little nervous.
That's what we do here.
Yeah.
Who else? And I've even been interacting some with Gibbs Tackle, and what they do. And they have been doing a really nice series on, having the pro staffers share, what their favorites are from Gibbs Delta. And these are all great things to help boost that following for the vendors, whether it's, sharing their telling them about the pro staffers, sharing what orders they get, and taking pictures of that, sharing that on our Facebook page. All that stuff goes out through me too, and people see that and then go, oh, well, that's something I'd like to order, stuff like that. So it's been very interesting from that perspective too.
So you're sharing this stuff on the Facebook page. It goes onto your website, but you've got actual categories on your website of the different categories. Tell me a little bit about the categories. It's
not organized as best as I would like, but all these companies, when I follow them, I create a page on my website, and I go through and I try to categorize the lures that they have. Sometimes they're hard to classify, but out there, if you want to look at companies that make rod holders, all you got to do is go to my vendor page and select companies that make rod holders, and you're going to see 20, 30 companies out there that do that from all over the country. So
you've got categories like giveaways and things like that too. So people looking for that.
Yep, that as well. There's definitely kind of the daily stuff that gets reported would be just the general daily news. There's a dedicated page for new products. There's a dedicated page for sales and giveaways, things like that. So
your Sweetwater Trolling on Facebook. What's the website?
The website is just www.sweetwatertrolling.com.
Simple and easy. Where are you based from?
I'm based out of Niles, Michigan, and I fish out of St. Joe, Michigan a lot. So
very cool. So how'd you end up here? We're a little ways away from there.
You are. Well, I'm good friends. I'm a pro staffer for GRC Trolling Flies, so I've been with him for a couple of years now. Love his product. Fantastic flies, fantastic meat rigs and stuff like that. So I've been trying to come out here for a couple of years now. COVID got in the way. I finally managed to make it work last minute, so that's how I ended up out here.
So this is the first time at this show?
First time with this show, yeah.
So what do you think?
I like it. It's a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people here. Chinook diver folks down there, some of the nicest people you ever meet. Really, really enjoyed it.
So you've got your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on social media-wise. You ended up in this room, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Were there any companies that you saw this weekend that you didn't know about?
3L Flies, I think's the name of it, was one of them that I hadn't heard of.
Okay.
I think that's the one that surprised me. Like I'm on the interwebs all the time, so I catch a lot of them. A lot of guys try to help me out, and they're saying, "Do you have this one?" Yeah, I already know about them. Yeah,
Right.
So, but yeah, that's definitely one of the new ones. They were down there tying Logan, about my son's age, so 14, 15, was down there tying peanut flies, right in front of people, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
So you're fishing out of St. Joe's. You just told me you've got a son.
Yep.
What's your fishing look like?
So I am pretty much on the water every weekend from mid-March through September, maybe even into October, depending on weather conditions and what the condition of my boat is after a full season of fishing.
Yeah.
So I run do a lot of trout and salmon fishing out of St. Joe. Occasionally we'll do some river fishing as well.
So you're not a charter captain?
No.
Just a recreational?
Just do it for fun.
What are you running for a boat?
I have a used craft Ocean Pro 220.
Okay, that's really
cool
boat.
It's a fantastic boat. Love that boat.
Tell me how that sets up. How do you get your boat set up?
So I've got the boat set up. I've got Scotty Downriggers on either side. Sorry, I've switched Downrigger so many times, I'm confusing myself. So right now I'm running a Scotty, the high-powered ones, the so that I can run the heavy weights because we fish deep. We're out there fishing 250, 300 foot of water quite a bit. I've got 2 Ray Marine displays, Axiom 9s, one at the front of the boat, one at the back, so I can see what's going on. And then I'm running a Fishhawk X4 for my speed, temp, and depth. And I'm typically running 12 rods, 10 to 12 rods.
How do you get them set up? You got your 2 downriggers.
So I got 2 downriggers, 2 dipsies, and then, depending on conditions, I'll be running, depending on the time of the year, I'm running either lead core, copper. I haven't done weighted steel yet. That's the one thing I haven't tried yet. So I'm curious about that. And hopefully we'll pull the trigger on that soon.
Yeah, I think my next trolling boat is going to be that direction.
Yeah.
And so, we're on, our home water is Lake Superior, and man, for a trailerable boat, that's pretty tough to beat that setup like you've got.
I tell you what, that boat is tough as nails.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to break yourself before you break the boat. And I've been out there in some pretty gnarly conditions. We've been out there. When I test drove it, we were out in 8 to 16s. And
no thanks.
No, it wasn't fun. But I have to say, I felt safer in that boat than my old Tracker Pro Guide.
Yeah, well,
and the 3-footers. It was a totally different world.
Yeah.
So fantastic boat. And lots of options for rigging and setting up too.
Yeah, I think you're just going to continue to see more and more of those hulls in the
Absolutely. They've become. Yeah. It's amazing how popular they've become.
Yeah.
And they're really solid boats.
Yeah.
It's one of those boats, though, I think that people look at it and go, well, that's a Western boat. But as it becomes more and more popular.
I think as you experience them, as more and more guys have them, and it's just a kind of a word of mouth thing, and you get somebody that's on the dock with you, and hey, let's go for a ride and whatever. I think as you experience them, it just makes a lot of sense. And I can tell you firsthand, we put a lot more product now on 18 to 20 foot trailer boats than we do on a charter boat or a big glass boat or something like that, because that's boats aren't cheap, as we all know.
No, they're not.
I mean, these are major investments, and that style of boat just has a lot of value over a long period of time.
And the thing is with that boat, other than repowering, that boat's going to last for my son and maybe his son.
I don't even think Captain Krabby could mess that boat. I mean, you want to eat Cheetos? Great, eat Cheetos. I don't care.
Yeah.
We'll rinse it out.
Yeah, we'll rinse it out. So.
And the other, the fun thing is if you follow the Hughescraft folks out west, they're putting quads on top of those things. No, they got 2 quads and a moose in the boat.
Yeah,
and they're
exactly.
hauling stuff out of the bush with that. You're going, how would you do that?
Right.
So, a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, when you're fishing in those kind of environments, it has to do a lot of different.
It has to be bulletproof, and it is. So,
what?
Cool.
When did you start? You might ask this question. When did you start Sweetwater trolling? When did you really kind of get going with it?
So Sweetwater trolling's been about 2.5 years now.
2.5 years.
Yep.
I mean, social media changes fast. What are the changes that you've noticed just in that 2.5 year span?
So you definitely are seeing a shift towards people understanding the value of social media more, and the value of being able to push and sell product through it, right? So like the companies that it's rather interesting. You got the companies that don't really understand it, so you don't see a lot of activity on social media. But the guys who do start to get it and can post regularly, like even if it's just 2 or 3 posts a week, even if it's just customer X did this order, here's a picture of the order, that makes a difference in terms of you got to have that activity to drive customers to your website. Just that makes a huge difference. So, there's a lot more of that. I'm really excited about some of the 3D technology that's coming out and seeing some of the stuff they're doing with printing lures and printing, there's A3D Outdoors. They do 3D printed like light boxes that go in your track system and 3D printed tool holders that go in your track systems. Those are things that are nice and relatively inexpensive for somebody who's starting out versus Trax Tech and all those guys. They're great, but it's not a budget friendly thing, right? If you don't have the budget, these A3D Outdoors have an option for you that's relatively cost effective too.
It's something that a guy can or gal can start that type of business in their basement pretty inexpensively.
Exactly.
Look at the Trax Tech to be able to make machined aluminum stuff Like
That's
Yeah, it was a major
huge
capital.
outlay.
Major capital investment.
You know, and going back to like brown dog fishing, they can tweak that lure over and over again with almost no cost, right?
Sure.
They go out, they test it, don't like how it's performing, they come back in, they redesign it slightly, and they print a new one out. And they're like the really exciting part of the industry that I think is going to get a lot bigger as things go on.
That's interesting. Really interesting.
And seeing those kind of products, you know, that get developed in someone's garage in Oregon, and then you're putting it out on your social channel in Michigan, and somebody from New York sees it and says, "I want to order that."
Yep.
That's pretty cool. And we hear that a lot with the captains we bring onto the podcast, and that, you know, maybe 3 years ago when we started this, and you kind of had to talk those guys into coming onto the show, and now they're like, "Hey, can I be on the show?" Because the last time I was on the show, I booked 5 trips.
Yeah.
So like, once they start putting these things together, like, it becomes very different.
I'm here to tell you, Chris Larson has fanboys now.
Yeah.
Even a few fangirls. So I've seen it firsthand here where we've had just a great response from people and you know that appreciate the content and they're like, "Wow, that's Chris Larson."
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because you interviewed Sergio Ferreira yesterday.
Yeah.
And he was commenting that he was getting people saying, "Oh, we saw you. This is awesome." Yeah.
Yesterday, maybe the day before, I don't know. I don't know how old he was. I'm guessing he's in his 80s, early 80s. And he came and thanked us for producing the podcast. And 3 years ago, that guy didn't know what a podcast was.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that to me is pretty cool that you've got somebody that's in their 80s that's embracing, new technology, new media. I mean, that's pretty darn cool.
So that's also an interesting thing because the technology is finally getting to a point where the point of entry is a lot
Everybody
easier.
can do it. Yeah.
It's amazing how easy it is to set up a website and storefront with relatively little knowledge. It's not easy, but it doesn't take a whole lot. Right? There are times where there's just no way you could even do that. But now you can. It's all point and click. So it's really cool how that stuff's coming along.
And even doing this stuff, the next guest we'll have coming on, they started their own podcast just recently.
Yeah.
And she was telling me, hey, we're just using these Blue Yeti microphones. They're really inexpensive. You plug right into your laptop and you just start talking. And they're like, we're just like amazed that this works. And it's like,
it works good.
Yeah, it does, right?
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a whole lot. And like, the other side of that is like the video editing options that are out there are relatively inexpensive now and simple to use. I play around with it too.
I personally think it's going to be, this is the tip of the iceberg, right? Because my kids, your kids, they're doing this stuff for fun. We got involved with this for a different, different motives, right? Now these are kids that have grown up with it, that they do it just because they can.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to produce? I mean, it's going to be, I know what your daughter produces, which is a pretty cool stuff, mostly at his expense, but
she makes fun of me on YouTube and gets 9 million views doing it.
Literally.
Awesome. Yeah. My son will do that too.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that many followers though. But the other thing that I think we're going to see a big jump in really, really soon, and Canon's kind of got the market on that right now, which is the integration between all these systems, right? So I think that's just going to get better and better and really be huge in the coming several years.
Yeah, just to see the growth and all this stuff, and just how fast it spreads too. You start talking and things look exactly. You're kind of the gasoline on this, and that we put something out, and then you see it, and then you put it out, and then maybe someone else says, "Oh, that's cool," and then they share it, and all of a sudden it's all over.
Yeah, and it's amazing how quick it spreads. All of a sudden you got guys talking to you up in the middle of nowhere in British Columbia, and you're going, "How did you even find me?" It's amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. Is there anything else, Doug, that you want to talk about before we let you go here?
No, this is awesome. I thank you very much for having me on. It's really been fun.
Well, thanks for doing what you do. I mean, not only
Appreciate
it helps us, and it's exciting for me every morning to wake up and see that our stuff got shared, but you're helping the entire industry too.
Yeah.
And you're helping the people that are out there fishing learn about what's going on out there as well.
Yeah, very cool. And thank you again very much.
Yeah, so you're helping grow the sport.
So, yep.
So we appreciate you.
Go ball, man.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, I'm looking around here, Trevor, and
You want me to make the run?
you might have to make a run here.
All right, I'll go make the
I
run.
think these guys get excited in their booth.
Well, you get talking to people, and
Right.
and so
People don't want to leave.
yeah.
So Trevor's going to go chase down the next guest and try to get him in the booth. We're just going to talk a little bit here, as long as Trevor goes, about what we've got going on here. So obviously this weekend was a really busy weekend, and I'm sure if you're on our mailing list, you've been getting an email every morning about what's going on with the show. We did 42. We'll be doing 42 segments when we're wrapped up here. I think we're 40 segments into this weekend's show right now. So we're going to start putting those out on the podcast platform. And I think what we're going to do is put out 3 a week. So that should get us through about the end of April, early May. But I want to get these out here to the podcast folks. We appreciate you guys watching live. It's fun to have you live and being able to interact with the show. But we're going to get, most of the people who listen to this are going to be listening to it on the podcast. So that's what the podcast is going to look like here for the next 3 months or so, is we'll break these all up. We'll get this stuff on YouTube as well, broken up. So just hope that everybody's kind of enjoyed this thing, and it's something that we've been doing now for 3 years. I was telling Trevor, the first episodes we ever recorded of this were right here at this show 3 years ago in the back room. Come on in, guys.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. We've got Jess Pallister-Dew.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And your brother, Brad Pallister.
Nailed it.
How are you guys doing today?
We're
good.
great. This is an intimidating setup, though. This is swanky.
We got some lights. You get the gold microphone.
Well,
Wow,
that's
she's
very
the
important.
That's right.
She's a favorite.
Just ask our mom and dad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or everybody.
So what's fun about this, we were actually just talking about this with our last guest, is that, we're out here at the show and we're shaking hands and meeting people. And you guys walked up to the booth yesterday just to talk about podcasting. And I'm like, we just got to have you on our show. So you guys have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and how that got started.
So we are only 13 episodes into our podcast, so we're relatively rookies. But my brother loves podcasts. He listens to yours. He's a fan. I had to matchmake you yesterday. I think he was a little nervous approaching you. But we were looking for a way to really bring the community of anglers together in our area. Our brand's really well recognized in Western Canada, and to put our faces behind our brand a little bit more. We're a 4th generation family business, and we're not huge anglers, Brad and I. So it's our chance to talk to people who, know what they're doing. We know how to make a good spoon.
Yep.
That we know how to do.
We're not anglers by any means, as most of my friends will very eagerly tell people.
I think there was a sign that was put up in our neck of the woods. It was like, Joe stinks at fishing. They put it on the
I saw
billboard
that.
up in our
Yeah,
neck
I
of the
saw
woods,
that.
so-
That's unbelievably so.
So maybe we need to make a Brad one.
I'm sure my friends don't give them any ideas. Probably will happen.
Or me. I'm a graphic designer, so consider it done.
Perfect.
There you go. So the podcast was Made for Memories podcast.
Yes.
I found it on Apple Podcasts, so it's in all kind of the places that you're going to find podcasts. And what you guys do is you talk about the business of fishing,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And I think it's something that, all these people in here that we talk to, especially in this building, there's a lot of kind of smaller brands that were just created out of someone's garage or someone's basement.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of interest. There's a lot of people that fish that say, man, I'd love to work in the fishing industry. I'd love to come up with something that would put me in one of these booths and get to talk to people. And that's what your show is. You're talking to people who are in the fishing industry. You guys tell your story a lot too, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, it's not just the lure side though. We try to dive into the business like we had a sales rep on and learn that sales reps are a key part of our industry. How does that business work? We have a lodge owner, how does that work?
We had a trout farm on.
Yeah, we had a trout
Which
farm
was cool.
on. Yeah, exactly. How does stocking trout work? And what's the business behind that. So we try to get into a bunch of different areas of the business of the outdoor industry, not just spoons or lures or whatever. And yeah, of course, we try to be like, there is a component. Most people plug the Len Thompsons, the Northern Kings during it, but that's not the key focus. The key focus is, it's like, I'm interested in generic information about a certain topic. I listen to podcasts that cover a wide variety of information. That's why I like Fishing the Great Lakes podcast, because it's a wide variety of topics, and you learn a lot more than something that dives into something ad nauseum. So.
Well, and fishing is so regional, right? It's so different here than it is in the Western Prairies where we're from. So you could learn something from anybody that you didn't know before.
And I think that's what's great about podcasting too, is you can find a podcast about the business of fishing. You can find a podcast about Great Lakes fishing. We're actually planning on starting a new podcast. It'll be coming out really soon, and it's going to be about Western fishing. And we were considering doing it along with the Great Lakes show. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense, because we have our Great Lakes audience, and I don't want to hit them with Western fishing, because most of those people aren't interested in that. So that's the beauty of podcasting, is we can do our own show. It's not like back in the days when there was 3 TV channels and everything had to go on those 3 TV channels. So every show had to appeal to everyone. Now we can do micro broadcasting and get those shows out to the people that are going to appeal to those shows. So that's what's the beauty with the podcast, is that you can do these types of things that focus on one sole topic or one sole range of topics in it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you guys started the podcast to put a face to your brand. That's one thing we haven't talked about yet, is your brand. So tell us kind of who you are, because I know you guys it's a family company. It's a 4th generation company. Tell us how that's evolved.
Yeah, so our great-grandfather, Len Thompson, started a company in his shed in 1929, looking for something that could outcatch his friends' tackle that they could buy at the time. And over, a couple of decades, it grew into from a part-time business into a full-time business in 1945, when he asked my grandpa, Pallister, who married Len's daughter, into the business, and they created a full-time business out of it, and it's been going strong ever since then. I joined the business 11 years ago from a banking career. Jess joined a couple, 3 years after me. She is a marketing bring Thompson and tried to build it up into a little bit bigger house, and part of that was buying a trolling spoon brand, which was Northern King, which we bought in 2016. So yeah, that's us in a real quick nutshell, I think.
We bought Northern King in 2016 from another family business. They were 2nd generation, and it just felt like a really good fit. I think they were excited that we were planning on carrying on not only the product and keeping it made in North America. So they used to make it in Rochester, New York, and now we make it up in Canada, but also carrying on his name and his legacy. And history is really important to us. So you see the old stuff that we have in the factory.
Got a little museum there.
Yeah.
I love that you come from the finance background and you come from the marketing background, because usually these businesses are driven either by the marketing people or the finance people. And those companies sometimes don't work out very well. You need some yin and yang in there, and that's what you guys bring.
Well, and we actually get along. People ask us that a lot.
Yeah.
They're like, how does
No.
we get along pretty well, and we're passionate about different things. So it's
very complementary personalities too.
And
like,
I'm more fun,
well,
obviously.
Debatable. She's an introvert too, and I'm an extrovert, and you wouldn't think that, but it works, because you got somebody that can tap the brakes a little bit if I'm going too strong, and vice versa, right? So it works pretty good for us.
So tell me about this bring a little bit of I'll throw you when you find out Northern King, a little bit about that.
Worth you.
And so North had a carrier but the spoon special because it tried to develop by Betsy that and a blank manufacturer has in size.
We
We were all proud because we launched with 18 colors, and that's more than we had because we had some. Obviously, we needed the constructive feedback, but the feedback was strong. Compared to 2,500 colors, 18, and
oops,
yeah. But over the time, even the show, we've really got some really positive feedback, and we still have some ways to go. But we rely on people that fish the Great Lakes because we don't fish the Great Lakes. We just know how to make a good spoon. So if we get the right colors and we get the right sizes and we get the right assortment and distribute it to the right regions, hopefully, we're going to rebuild back what was once one of the most powerful, popular, I guess, brands in the Great Lakes. So
you've been here at this show all weekend long. This is the last day of the show. There's not probably a better room to have some Great Lakes stuff set up than that. You've got a ton of charter captains here, and you have a ton of really, really good recreational anglers in the room.
Mm-hmm.
What have you kind of feedback have you received this week? What are you going to take home with the lessons moving forward?
Excellent. One that we said this pattern you needed, this pattern you needed, this pattern you needed. So I think we're covering the basics a lot better. But I think there's always learning because things are always changing, trends are always changing. But being here is a good chance to build those relationships and make those connections and get some samples back in boats again, because lots of these guys say they have 500 spoons in a tackle box, but they always seem to find room for one or two more. So it's about getting them in the water.
Yeah, and they had NK. They say, I got 500 NKs in my boat. Well, yeah, but have you tried the new Ultra Glows or no, I haven't seen those. Yeah, no, those are good. Yeah, those look really good because the technology changes even since the last 10 years and the painting and
paints are always changing. Regulations are always changing. The way they make paints are always changing. So we're always looking for improvements. This year we just put out a new glow. We've been working on our glow for years, trying to make it as strong, powerful, long-lasting, smooth as possible. And we're to the point where we're actually really, really happy with it. So it's been fun showing that off. We got all the UV lights in our booth and, people stopping being, ooh, shiny. Because sometimes it's about catching the fisherman almost more than catching the fish.
I don't know if I'd say sometimes.
Always it's about catching the fisherman. Yeah.
So you talk about that, and I don't want you to have to give away secrets or anything like that. How do you develop that? Like, how do you develop a paint combination? What work goes into that?
We have a really good team.
We do. We've got a good team that has a lot of leeway to make mistakes and try things out. We had some downtime over the pandemic too, that we were able to really focus on R&D and evaluate a ton of different paints because even if you get a paint, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work unless you develop the art behind it. Because there's science, but then there's the artistic part of the science, and it's definitely the unique part of our business. Paint is
tricky.
Tricky.
Tricky is a lighter word than what Brad was going to say.
Tell me about your facility. You guys are in Alberta, right?
Yep. Yes, we're in Alberta. We're in a community called Lacombe, which is halfway in between Edmonton and Calgary, if people are familiar with Alberta. And we're also home of the world's largest lure.
How did that happen?
For our 90th anniversary, we built a 40.5-inch spoon that's at
40 and a half
our,
inch.
or sorry, feet,
Yeah, 40 and a
40
half.
and a half feet lure that's at our community pond called the Len Thompson Trout Pond.
I saw that in your catalog today.
Did you?
And I was intrigued by that. Because do you guys have a U.S. catalog and a Canadian catalog?
We do.
Okay. Because I'm like, why are they measuring in inches? This is a Canadian company.
Well, actually, in Canada, metric is the dominant, but it's, I think, still in like construction and the outdoor industry, still imperial is the go-to measurement. I couldn't tell you how many kilograms I weigh, but I know how many too many pounds I weigh.
We're not going to talk about that.
So what are your plans moving forward? I mean, you brought this company on, you brought in Northern King in 2016. Len Thompson obviously is a legacy company that's been around forever with you guys and your family. Where do you see this company going forward?
I think for us, staying Canadian is extremely important. That's what we've built 94 years of history on. So we really want to keep committed to that. We have a factory of 16 employees, 18 including us right now. So we really want to stick close to home and then look for other opportunities to kind of grow and expand as they become available.
Yeah, I mean, we brand ourselves a 100% North American made product in terms of, the brass comes from Buffalo, the hooks or Eagle Claw come from Denver, the rings come from Washington State. Paint comes from Georgia, packaging comes from Chicago, and made with Canadian labor, and that's the way we really want to grow. Is not only necessarily in our product lines, but looking for strategically, viable opportunities to grow as a domestically made products brands. We like legacy brands, but until those opportunities come up, we're just going to focus really hard on what we know, which is spoons, and we're going to focus really hard on expanding our footprint in the Great Lakes through product development and getting it back into the market, and try to throw in a couple fishing trips in between too. Like
you got to test.
Yeah, exactly.
It's product testing.
Yeah.
We do a very poor job of that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
But
and more colors.
Yes, and of course, colors. Yes, so we don't get yelled at.
Well, it's interesting you brought up, you're Canadian made. You've got all of these different components that go into your product from North America. Obviously, with what's happened over the last 2 or 3 years, the companies that have been importing things from overseas have seen how that can affect their product and how it can affect how quickly they can get their product out. We still faced it as U.S. manufacturers, though, as well. I'm sure you did as Canadian manufacturers, but being North American produced definitely has its advantages, and it's something that people are looking for these days. But I think in this community, in this fishing community, it's even more important. Where have you guys seen that as well?
Yes and no. I mean, there is some good products that are made overseas. There's no question about that, and there are some great brands that make their products overseas. There's no question about that. And as a Canadian or North American manufacturer, I am well aware of the challenges of manufacturing domestically, but it works for us, and it's what we're passionate about. And we obviously want to see if we can expand that, especially as you say, the last few years through COVID, the supply chain being exclusively, not exclusively, but majority overseas has exposed some weak points. So if we can be part of consolidating that back to North America, or even just expanding our product line to what we have available here, that's just what we're passionate about. So no judgment against brands that decide to go overseas, that's for sure, because I get it, but we want to focus on North American made growth, and that's certainly where our passion lies. So.
All right, we'll talk to Jess now because I'm going to ask a marketing question now.
Yeah, I don't know anything about marketing.
If people want to know more about Len Thompson and Northern King Lures, where do they go?
They can go to lenthompson.com or nklures.com. And then we're also active on Facebook and Instagram under @FishLenThompson.
And is that where the Northern King stuff is?
Yeah,
as well?
they're combined together.
Okay,
Yeah.
combined together.
Mm-hmm.
And for our podcast listeners, you have to go to their podcast, Made for Memories podcast. I pulled it off of Apple today. where else is it?
It's also on Spotify, Apple, as you said, and you can listen to it on our website at lenthompson.com/podcast.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Brad Pallister, Jess Pallister-Dew, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting us. That was very unexpected.
Exciting.
And I was actually really nervous because I edit the podcast, right? So I can cut out if I sound like a dolt and say inches instead of feet. But now I'm exposed to the world.
It'll be okay.
It'll be okay? Okay.
That's the beauty of live, is that everyone gets to see our warts, and it's just fine. That's what I would say. It'll be okay.
It'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having us, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great meeting you guys. It was
You
fun.
too.
Thanks, Brad. Take care. All right, folks, we got one more guest left, and we're going to let Trevor sit down again as well. Trevor's got to go round him up, though. He was standing out in the bullpen, but he's one of those guys that when people see him, they stop him and they want to talk to him. And when people talk to this guy, it's like they like to tell the whole story. Because Jake, we're going to bring Jake Romanack on. Jake is a storyteller. That's what he does. And that's what we're going to talk about. Jake, you get to sit at the gold microphone.
Oh, the gold microphone.
So we got Jake Romanack from Fishing 411 TV. Jake, sit up a little bit closer to that mic.
Yep.
Get you right up in there. You've been a busy young man this weekend.
I have.
The plan was to be busy, but then your dad got a little sick, and then he became even busier.
That's right. So I've been doing double duty this week pretty much. So no, it's all been good. He just got the winter sickness. You know, we do a lot of sport shows in the wintertime and talk to a lot of people and shake a lot of hands.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris and I have been pounding
The emergencies.
Yeah.
I've been dragging these around with me show season all year long, and also lots of hand sanitizer.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I think I eat those little vitamin gummies like they're going out of style. So just trying to stop from being sick and see as many people as we can this winter.
Trevor says, you know, this is overkill. We're taking more than our body can absorb. I'm like, that's exactly where I want to be. I want to be at the max.
Max absorption, vitamin C, D, zinc.
So you've been teaching walleye school this weekend as well.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about the salmon school and how busy it was. Tell us about the walleye school and what that was like.
So we do the ultimate walleye clinic here at this show. We do a couple different shows throughout the winter, and it's a 2-hour clinic. The 2-hour clinic kind of goes in depth on a bunch of different topics, right? Trolling topics, casting, jigging, rigging, and it's opened up to just kind of open-end questions, right? Like that's the whole point, is that we want to teach. That's what Fishing 411 is for, is we're trying to teach guys as much information as we can and just try to make fishing fun, make fishing easy as we can. And that's basically what we did. We ran a couple of those different seminars this week, and they all went over really well. A lot of good questions and a great turnout.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about the shows. There's just been so many people here, and you walk around, and you look around sometimes in the show, and you're like, there's nobody in here. And then all of a sudden, there's just tons of people here.
The seminars let out, and it's like opening the floodgate.
Right.
I could definitely tell this last seminar I got done here just a few minutes ago, and guys were starting to be a little glass-eyed. They've sat in plenty of hours of seminars here this weekend. You can tell they took a lot of information on.
If you don't, if you come to this show specifically, and a lot of shows for that matter, I mean, you guys do seminars at a lot of venues, but you come to this show and don't leave, a better angler than you walked in, probably something wrong with you.
Right.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's your fault.
It's your fault.
It's your fault.
It's your
for
fault.
sure.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we talked to you here at the show the last time they had it, which was 3 years ago in 2020. That show, we talked about Isle Royal.
Yep.
And I think it's like episode 2 or 3 or 4 or something. It was one of the first shows we ever did. And it still stands as one of the most popular shows because I think that show or that topic, it kind of gets in people's hearts. They're like, that is something very different and very cool, and I want to try that out. Just give us like kind of a 2-minute story on that, and then I want to go to different destinations today with you.
Yeah,
I want you to talk about some of your favorite places.
Yeah, so one of the coolest things about what we get to do at Fishing 411 is we travel to some of the coolest fisheries in the world, right? And when we did that original podcast, we talked about Isle Royal being one of those places. Just it's remote, it's way offshore, it's long boat rides to get there, and then at the end of the day, we're camping in these little huts and catching some of the biggest fish that swim in the Great Lakes. So that was one of those trips that was just super special, but I have a lot of those trips. We get to see a lot of those cool places.
All right. You haven't started filming this year. How about last year?
Yep.
What was kind of one of the, or why don't you can give me two, or what are your favorite places that you went to last
I
year?
tell you what, my favorite trip last year, like without question, was I went to the Columbia River to catch walleyes. And that's been my number one go-to bucket list destination since as long as I can remember. I've always wanted to fish the Columbia River. I wanted to catch those big, beautiful walleye. And I got to do exactly that. It was right after the Grand Rapids show last year. Jumped on a plane, flew out there to see my buddy Austin Mosier. Got to spend a few days with him. We were on the Upper Niagara River fishing in Grand Coulee Dam, Grand Coulee area.
Upper Columbia, I mean.
Upper Columbia.
You can see I've been talking a lot here. The Upper
Upper Niagara's like right around.
It caught so many walleye. I can't explain to you how incredible it was. It's like a high desert there, right? So it looks like the desert, but you still got the rocks of the mountains. And it was springtime. There was turkeys gone. It didn't look like an area turkeys should be in, but there obviously was a lot of turkeys there. And we caught so many fish in that 8 to 12 pound range, doing it rod and hand casting a jig. I mean, it's one of my favorite ways of fishing. And so that one really stood out because it was a trip that took a little bit of coordinating to make happen. And it was one of those, like every fisherman has that bucket list, right? The places that they want to go, they want to travel, they want to see. And so, but then sometimes when you get to go to those places, they're not, you kind of hyped yourself up. They're not as good as what you think they're going to be. Well, when I got there and it was everything and more than I could imagine it being, it made it that much more special.
When the stars align, it's pretty cool, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a walleye fishery that people in this area, a lot of them don't know anything about it.
Right.
And it was really, it came to my knowledge
Yeah, there's a particular river, a little bit different forage base up there, and so there's mostly crayfish is what they're feeding on. You know, a 13 pounder is a big fish, just like it is here at home.
It's a lot of crayfish, dude.
It's a lot of crayfish. and the way we were catching them was with a football jig and a crayfish plastic too, with more bass fishing tactics. And these fish would literally come up, puking up crayfish, just gorging themselves on them. But because of that forage base in that section of river, they weren't the third class fish. Those are big walleye, but down by the Tri-City area is where they tend to get those 15, 16, 17 pound class fish. And it's because there's salmon smolt in that section of river. So they're feeding on a lot of salmon smolt. And then of course there's a good minnow based forage there in that section of river.
Tell me, you alluded to it a little bit, but how do you get to that place? Where were you flying in?
So that was the other really cool thing about that story, I thought. So I jumped on a plane. We flew out there. Our cameraman gave them warmer, and I jumped on a plane. We flew out. And this was still during COVID, right? This was last year's. Things were still shut down. Things weren't moving quite as they are now. And so we fly all day because we basically are now flying across the country. We get off the plane and it's late at night and there's nothing open. There's not a restaurant open. There's not a gas station open. There's nothing. I haven't eaten anything all day. I'm absolutely starving. And there's not a single restaurant in this entire town. We flew into Spokane, Washington, not a single time. Nothing's open. So I'm like, all right, we'll find something along the way. We had a rental vehicle. We start driving. We drive. Nothing. Everything's closed. Thank God the rental vehicle was full on fuel or we would have never got there. Pull in middle of the night. It's super late at night. Still haven't eaten anything. I'm texting Austin Mosier because we're going to start filming the very next morning. And I'm like, dude, I can't go fishing all day tomorrow and not eat something. I'm going on like 20 hours of no food. He's like, I'll bring you a burrito in the morning. So he brought me a burrito. We're pounding that as we're heading out. And it's just like all the things that had to come together very quickly. And then I think literally on my very first cast, I caught a fish. And it was like that the rest of the day pretty much. So
yeah, insane. We went to Eastern Oregon last summer. And people from this area don't realize because you can pretty much fly in wherever you want.
The space between is
we drove
real.
6 hours from the airport to get to where we were going.
Yeah.
That's as close as you can get.
That's as close as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's pretty insane when you start talking about those areas.
It's so spread out. And then I got a lot of friends out on the West Coast. So I'm going out there, pick up the phone. Hey, I'm going to be out in, Washington. Let's meet up. And then you realize how far away they actually live from where you're
point
going.
A and point B or
It's like, no, I mean, it's not even realistic to go see each other. It's too far. But
in some of the places you look at and you're like, well, the way the bird flies, we're 30 miles apart, but it's a 2-hour drive to get there because you have to go around a mountain.
Around a mountain or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Great Lakes a little bit.
Yeah.
we're going to break it down by lake.
Okay.
How about Lake Superior? What's your favorite place in Lake Superior?
If I had to pick one spot on Lake Superior, it's Standard Rock. And the reason for that, it's near and dear to my heart. I caught a 37-pound lake trout there, and that's a very hard fish to catch anywhere in the world. And so that'll forever be in my heart, the place. They call it the most loneliest place on earth for a reason. There's a lighthouse 55 miles offshore. And back in the day, they used to actually physically man that lighthouse. There was people that lived out there for any periods of time. They would get food brought to them. And I couldn't think of a more miserable place to have to live in the middle of Lake Superior. But as far as fishing goes, some of the biggest lake trout that swim in the world swim right there at Standard Rock on that structure.
That's because it's the loneliest place in the world.
That's right. That's right. And you think, and big lake trout take a long time to grow, right?
They're old
So,
fish.
yeah, some of these fish that, when that 37-pounder that I caught on Fishing 411 on film, they're saying that fish can be over 50 years old or more, right? So that fish has been swimming around in the Great Lakes for a very long, a very long time.
Longer than you.
Longer than twice as long as me.
Longer.
Almost.
Yeah. I'm getting close. So.
All right, Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan, if I had to pick one fishery, again, this is a biased type thing. Now I get to pick.
Biased opinion.
Are we talking salmon fishing? Or are we talking
Doesn't
walleye
matter.
fishing?
You're going to go. Say you get to fish Lake Michigan one time this year.
Okay. If I get to fish Lake Michigan one time, it's probably going to be on the Wisconsin shoreline. I'm going to make a lot of my Michigan people upset, but it's going to be.
I thought you were going. I thought you were going Frankfurt.
I was thinking salmon. I love Frankfurt. Grew up fishing Frankfurt my whole life. I'm thinking salmon in my mind at first, but I'm not. I'm taking salmon away, going back to walleye because it's what I love. Green Bay is a part of that whole system, and so I have to give that to the Wisconsin shoreline and Green Bay. Green Bay is one of my favorite fisheries because it's not an easy fishery. When it's good, it's world class, and when it's bad, you wonder if you've ever caught a fish before in your life and what you're doing. We've had really good trips there, and we've had really bad trips. And for me, I like that even more. Like I like that drive of figuring those fish out.
I'll take easy any day of the week.
Well,
he fishes all the time.
I know. I want easy.
I love those big walleyes on Green Bay. It's pretty hard to beat that fishery. If it comes to salmon, I'm still probably going to give it to the Wisconsin shoreline. They're stocking a lot of fish in the state of Wisconsin right now. And because of it, their salmon fishing's good. Our state, and I say our state, it's the state of Michigan that I live in, we've cut back considerably in salmon stocking. And so I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I'm going to give it to the Wisconsin shoreline as a destination. The Sheboygan area is really hard to beat.
Sheboygan. All right, well, let's flip over to the other side of Michigan, and perhaps Ontario. What do you like on Lake Huron?
Lake Huron. Now, Lake Huron's near and dear to my heart too. I spent a lot of time fishing Lake Huron. I could be pretty simple here. I could say Saginaw Bay, right? But that's boring. Let's not say Saginaw Bay. One of my favorite places on Lake Huron to fish is the north shore of Lake Huron, at the mouth of the St. Mary's River, in Detour, Michigan. There's a Atlantic salmon fishery there that's very good. It happens every year in May and June and into July. And it's one of my favorite places. Gorgeous scenery. Atlantic salmon, one of the coolest fish that swim in the Great Lakes, without question. They're not like Pacific Kings, right? They're not temperature sensitive. There's so many things that they don't do. And again, I like difficult things. I like fish that make me have to think and how to catch them. And so I got to give it to that Detour area in the North Shore of Lake Huron.
All right, let's move south. If you like walleyes, we're going to go to Lake Erie.
Yep.
What's your favorite spot in Lake Erie?
I don't know if there's a bad spot on Lake Erie right now, but if I had to give Lake Erie the love, I had to pick one port, it's going to be more towards the center of the lake, maybe like Cleveland, Ohio. And the reason for that is the different species of fish they have to target there. Obviously, when you think of walleye, when you think of Lake Erie, you think of walleye fishing, but there's great perch fishing opportunities, there's great steelhead fishing opportunities, there's great walleye fishing opportunities. And you start getting towards that central basin of Lake Erie, you get sick of catching walleyes, that's okay. There's steelhead to go out there and target. If you get sick of catching steelhead, that's great. There's perch to go out there and target. There's lake trout to go out and target. So there's other species of fish within that area, and that's why I got to give it to the central basin of Lake Erie.
All right. Let's go to Lake Ontario.
Lake Ontario is where we're sitting right now. Right. It doesn't get any better than this. Lewiston, New York. Niagara Falls is where we're sitting right now. Lewiston, New York is my favorite port in Lake Ontario, without question. It's got some of the best spring fisheries, some of the best winter fisheries, some of the best summer fisheries. If there's a place that a fish loves to live, it's right here where we're sitting.
All right. Well, we also have right out the back door the Niagara River.
Yes.
And I know that's a place that you guys fish a lot and you enjoy. Tell me about fishing the Niagara River.
You know, and that's why I gave it to Lewiston, because if I had to be biased towards any fishery, the reason why Lewiston takes it for Lake Ontario for me is because of the Niagara River that comes out there. They're fishing up in the lake in the middle of the winter time. Still a winter fishery happening here in the Niagara River. The steelhead fishery is incredible. The brown trout fishery is world class. There's a really good walleye population in the lower Niagara River. And so it just kind of goes on and on. Of course, lake trout come into the river. They catch them a multitude of different ways, whether they're, a lot of them are the same type of fishing where they're fishing a three-way rig, but they're either fishing a three-way rig with a plug, like a maglet crankbait, or they're fishing a three-way rig with a minnow or spawn. But it's that same type of presentation, just changing the actual piece to the puzzle there, the business end. But it's a fishery that literally, it's a year-round fishery. There's only a couple, maybe a month out of the year that they might not be able to fish weather permitting, but they can get out there, you know, day after day and catch fish day after day. And if you've ever had the opportunity to fish what they call the Devil's Hole, which is just right here, it's right around my shoulder. It is the most spooky, crazy, scary.
The boat goes down in the sinkhole. I mean, like you feel you're like going downhill and then you're going uphill because the water, it's like a giant toilet bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't describe it better than that. You feel like you're in a toilet bowl. That water's moving, and the fishing there is incredible. You know, obviously in like an August time frame, they got king salmon going up there, so they're catching kings. Right now in the winter, incredible steelhead fishery. You know, when the steelhead come up and the salmon come up and then the lake trout come up in there, and it's just like you don't know what you're going to catch is what's cool about that. But at the same time, you're in what they call the Niagara Gorge, right? So it's like these big giant walls come straight up a rock wall that turns into concrete walls because there's a power plant right there at the Devil's Hole. And it's an experience. You get a chance to go there, you feel like a very small person inside the Devil's Hole.
Pretty neat, yeah.
Well, you got a new season coming up and that's kind of the excitement in this room is everybody's thinking about what they got going on this year.
Yep.
Tell us about some of the things you have planned for this season.
You know, we always keep it pretty open-minded. You know, back to Canada travel is back pretty normal again, so we'll do a couple remote shows in Canada. I'm looking forward to that. I like the camping and outdoor part of that. So just like that Isle Royal trip, right? Like I like the aspect of the whole Canada feel. So I'm looking forward to go back to Canada. We'll probably be on Lake Nipigon at some point this year. That's one of my, if I had to pick a favorite fishery in the world, it's Lake Nipigon. It's my favorite place. Everything that swims there is big and there's a lot of them. But this is season 18 of Fishing 411. I can't believe that we've been doing this for 18 seasons. I'm 27 years old. So like literally as long as I can remember, we've been doing TV pretty much. So I'm super excited about everything that has to go with this next season. We're going to shoot a lot of shows in the Great Lakes. We're going to shoot a lot of shows in the Midwest. Why? Because that's who we are. That's what we're knowledgeable about. And that's what I want to keep doing. And so there'll be Lake Erie shows. There'll be, ideally we'll have a show, at least one show shot in all 5 Great Lakes. That's what we try to do each year. And then there'll be some more Canada aspect to it. I got one trip planned this year in northern Minnesota. We're going to go up to Rainy Lake and we're going to do a walleye show up there with my buddy Donnie Obert. I'm super excited of doing a show with him up there. So a little bit further from home, but still in that same Midwest area, Midwest feel.
So when Fishing 411 started, you were 9, 10 years old.
Right.
You know, probably about like that.
Yeah.
And
about like that. Yeah.
Dad was doing his thing and you were doing your thing. I hear there's a young Romanack.
There is. Yeah. Yep. I had a little boy. Well, I didn't have it. My wife, I'll give the credit to my beautiful wife. She had a beautiful boy 15 months ago. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm going to leave it open to him if he wants to fish for a living, right? Like he might not want to, and I'm not going to push him for that, but I'm going to give him all the opportunities that he possibly wants. And that's what my dad did for me. He never forced this on me in any way. I was obsessed with it from day one. I wanted to be a professional fisherman. When you always say like these little kids in an elementary school, the teacher says, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And then the kid says, "My dad." Well, most people grow up and go get a real job. I never grew up. I still wanted to be just like my dad. So I hope that's something that he wants, and we'll give him that opportunity. But, you know, if he wants a real job, he can do that too.
All right, we got a couple things here from the audience, and we'll wrap up. Tom just says he missed you at the Columbus, Ohio show. And then we got one from here from Nick Cook. He doesn't want to miss you. is when are your next seminars in Michigan?
We actually have seminars coming up very quickly. I leave Tuesday. So today is, what is today? Sunday, right?
It's Sunday.
So I leave today, Sunday, head back to Michigan, repack the trailer and repack everything, heading back down to Detroit, Michigan, Novi, Michigan Tuesday. So a real quick turnaround. Thursday starts the Outdoor Rama show there in Novi, Michigan, and that goes Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's where I will be doing seminars. My dad will also be there doing seminars, and then on top of that, we got about a week off, and then you have a Grand Rapids sports show. I think that's about the 9th of March that starts. There's another week of doing sports shows in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so we have quite a bit more speaking before the winter's up.
Busy young man.
Love it. Wouldn't trade it for the world. It makes the days go by fast. I can tell you that. Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking some time out to come see us.
Absolutely.
It was fun chatting with you all weekend.
Yeah.
You guys were set up right next to us, so that was fun too.
Yeah, very cool. Whenever I get to sit between, look at this. This is just absolutely.
That's Jake Romanack from Fishing 411 TV. Jake, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Trevor, this is it, man.
Is it?
Does it feel crazy? We flew in here Wednesday.
Yeah.
About 2 hours,
Back on about 8.
but we're after 4 days of shows.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the guest host format. I think that worked
fun.
really, really well. We got some different perspectives on things. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the best stuff we've ever done.
Yeah, it was fun. It was enjoyable. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy it over the next few months as we get this out on the podcast. But yeah, I think we both decided that this is the way to do the show. Stay on the road, get out and see some people, let some other people sit in the co-host chair, and
Yeah,
it was just a good time.
That, and I mean, it really is. I mean, the number of people that know what a podcast even is today versus 3 years ago, it's pretty much everybody know it.
Everybody we had sitting, thanks for watching, and just thanks for letting us kind of be in your ear all the time and talk to you about fishing. We enjoy it, and we love that you guys enjoy it. We'll talk to you next time. We'll be taking the show on the road again next year, but you'll hear from us all year long. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.